But of the Jews none washed their hands, neither Herod nor any of his judges. And as they would not wash, Pilate stood up. And then Herod the king commanded that the Lord should be taken off, saying to them,
"What I have commanded you to do to him, do."
Now there stood there Joseph, the friend of Pilate and the Lord, and knowing that they were about to crucify him, he came to Pilate and asked for the body of the Lord for burial. And Pilate sent to Herod and asked for his body. And Herod said,
"Brother Pilate, even if no one had asked for him, we should bury him, since the Sabbath is drawing on. For it stands written in the law, the sun should not set on one that has been put to death."
And he delivered him to the people before the first day of unleavened bread, their feast. So they took the Lord and pushed him as they ran and said,
"Let us drag the Son of God along now that we have got power over him."
And they put upon him a purple robe and set him on the judgment seat and said,
"Judge righteously, O King of Israel."
And one of them brought a crown of thorns and put it on the Lord's head. And others who stood by spat on his eyes, and others slapped him on the cheeks, others pricked him with a reed. And some scourged him, saying,
"With this honor let us honor the Son of God."
And they brought two malefactors, and crucified the Lord between them. But he held his peace, as if he felt no pain. And when they had set up the cross, they wrote, "This is the King of Israel." And having laid down his garments before him, they divided them among themselves and cast lots for them. But one of the malefactors rebuked them, saying, "We are suffering for the deeds of men. What wrong has he done you?" And they were angry with him and commanded that his legs should not be broken, so that he might die in torment. Now it was midday, and darkness covered all Judea, and they became anxious and distressed lest the sun had already set, since he was still alive. It stands written for them, "The sun should not set on one that has been murdered." And one of them said, "Give him to drink gall with vinegar." And having mixed it, they gave it to him to drink. And they fulfilled all things, and accumulated their sins on their head. And many went about with lamps, and, as they supposed that it was night, they stumbled. And the Lord called out and cried, "My power, O power, you have forsaken me." And having said this, he was taken up. And at the same hour the veil of the temple in Jerusalem was torn in two. And then the Jews drew the spikes from the hands of the Lord and laid him on the earth. And the whole earth shook, and there was great fear. Then the sun shone, and it was found to be the 9th hour. And the Jews rejoiced and gave his body to Joseph that he might bury it, since he had seen all the good deeds that Jesus, had done. And he took the Lord, washed him, wrapped him in linen, and brought him into his own sepulchre, called Joseph's garden. Then the Jews and the elders and the priests, perceiving what great evil they had done to themselves, began to lament and to say,
"Woe on our sins, judgment has arrived, and with it the end of Jerusalem."
But I mourned with my companions, and, being wounded in heart, we hid ourselves, for we were being sought after by them, as if we were evildoers, and as persons who wanted to set fire to the temple. Besides all these things, we were fasting and mourning and weeping night and day until the Sabbath.
But the scribes and Pharisees and elders, being assembled and hearing that the people were murmuring and beating their breasts, said,
"If it is that these exceeding great signs happened, behold how righteous he was."
They were afraid and came to Pilate, entreating him and saying,
"Give us soldiers that we may guard his sepulchre for 3 days, lest his disciples come and steal him away, and the people suppose that he is risen from the dead, and do us harm."
And Pilate gave them Petronius the centurion with soldiers to guard the sepulchre. And with them there came elders and scribes to the sepulchre, and all who were there together rolled a large stone, and laid it against the door to the sepulchre to exclude the centurion and the soldiers, and they put it on 7 seals, pitched a tent there and kept watch. Early in the morning, When the Sabbath dawned, there came a crowd from Jerusalem and the country round about to see the sealed sepulchre. Now in the night in which the Lord's day dawned, when the soldiers were keeping guard, 2 by 2 in each watch, there was a loud voice in heaven. And they saw the heavens open, and 2 men come down from there in a great brightness, and draw near to the sepulchre. That stone which had been laid against the entrance to the sepulchre started of itself to roll and move sidewards, and the sepulchre was opened and both young men entered. When those soldiers saw this, they awakened the centurion and the elders, for they also were there to mount guard. And while they were narrating what they had seen, they saw 3 men come out from the sepulchre, 2 of them supporting the other, and a cross following them, and the heads of the 2 reaching to heaven, but that of him who was being led reached beyond the heavens. And they heard a voice out of the heavens crying, "Have you preached to those who sleep?" And from the cross there was heard the answer, "Yes." Therefore, the men decided among themselves to go and report these things to Pilate. And while they were still deliberating, the heavens were again seen to open, and a man descended and entered the tomb. When those who were of the centurion's company saw this, they hurried by night to Pilate, leaving the sepulchre which they were guarding, and reported everything that they had seen, being greatly agitated and saying,
In truth he was the Son of God.
Pilate answered and said,
I am clean from the blood of the Son of God. It was you who desired it.
Then they all came to him, beseeching him and urgently calling upon him to command the centurion and the soldiers to tell no one about the things they had seen.
For it is better for us
They said,
to make ourselves guilty of the greatest sin before God than to fall into the hands of the people of the Jews and be stoned.
Pilate therefore commanded the centurion and the soldiers to say nothing. At dawn on the Lord's day, Mary Magdalene, a woman disciple of the Lord, for fear of the Jews, since they were inflamed with wrath, had not done at the sepulchre of the Lord what women are accustomed to do for their dead loved ones. She took with her women friends and came to the sepulchre where he was laid. And they were afraid lest the Jews should see them, and said, Even though we could not weep and lament on that day when he was crucified, yet let us now do so at his sepulchre. But who will roll away for us the stone that is across the entrance to the sepulchre, that we may go in and sit beside him and do what is due? For the stone was great, and we fear lest anyone see us. And if we cannot do so, let us at least place by the entrance what we have brought as a memorial for him. And let us weep and lament until we go home. But having arrived, they found the sepulchre opened. And they came near, stooped down there, and saw a young man sitting in the middle of the sepulchre, comely, and clothed with a brightly shining robe.
Why have you come? Whom do you seek? Not the man who was crucified. He is risen and gone. But if you do not believe, stoop this way and see the place where he lay, for he is not there. For he is risen and is gone to the place from which he was sent.
Then the women fled frightened.
Now it was the last day of unleavened bread, and many went away and returned to their homes, because the feast was at an end. But we, the 12 disciples of the Lord, wept and mourned, and each one, grieving for what had happened, returned to his own home. But I, Simon Peter, and my brother Andrew took our nets and went to the sea. And there was with us Levi, the son of Alphaeus, whom the Lord,